So, here's a realization I've come to. Prior to 2021, I probably spent less than a quarter of my day in a bed. And now I can be honest with you, outside of when I go outside of my home, which used to be with regularity on Wednesdays and Sundays, which has been problematic the last couple of months because I allowed it to become so. I can honestly say that since 2021, man, I mean, lucky to state honestly that I spent, well, let's put it this way. I went from spending a quarter of any given day, or less than a quarter in a given day in bed, to now I'm lucky if I'm outside of my bed more than 10%. So I say, I can honestly say I don't think 10% of my time is spent outside of my bed on any given day if I'm not at my apartment. Yeah, I know it's not. And so, how did that happen? And that's what I have to examine. So as we're accountable to ourselves first and foremost, and we're now accountable to one another, we have to ask ourselves, how is it that in such a short period of time, the whole makeup of our day, the whole way of about how we went about living our lives changed so drastically? And again, as we're starting out by being accountable to ourselves, how are we a catalyst in that? And were we the primary catalyst? And if we're the primary catalyst, obviously there's many things that happen that we could have controlled or responded to differently. That is necessary for us to examine. Not only examine, but acknowledge. Because once we do that, once we acknowledge said truth, then we can look at said truth and say, that's what brought us here. Now how do we confront this reality and change it? And that's the key, that through this whole process, we have to be looking how do we change the situation. And so I am examining myself, and as we are being accountable to one another, I need to tell us, I'm telling myself this, but this I want you to listen to, that I'm going to have to acknowledge where I am mentally, physically, and spiritually. And to be honest, reflecting back on when change has happened best in my life, I would have to say spiritually first and foremost, which then impacts my mental, which impacts my physical. Some people are so physically based, and if that's you, do what you have to examine first. I'll be honest, even though the physical aspects are what are lacking in my life, or what is most evident to most people, I can tell you where that all stems from. That stems from my spiritual not being where it needs to be, which in turn impacts my mental, which for me in turn impacts my physical. I have tried to focus on the physical for me. I care so little about that in some ways that, yeah, the initial progress of something, like for instance, losing weight or getting mobile, it works for about a New York minute for me. I'm good, I'm feeling great about it. It's not enough motivation for me that the first time something comes along and derails me, I stop doing all those things. The only time I have ever stayed successful for long periods of time and made any true progress of any sort in my life is when I am spiritually, I'm going to say, striving for spiritual soundness. I don't know if I can always say I'm sound in those periods, but it's a constant striving, acknowledging where I'm lacking, and, again, like striving from that point, say, okay, what do I have to do to get where I should be? And obviously, there's no denying, no matter what end of the spectrum you start, whether you personally need to focus on starting and building up the physical or building up the spiritual, either one of those obviously impacts the mental state. And the truth to be known, like I said, I personally believe the spiritual is the center. But if I had to debate which one is more on the same level of the spiritual, that I still don't know that it's the first place, but it definitely is right up there. I'm not going to line the physical up on the same level. For me, I am going to line the mental there. The mental and the spiritual for me cannot be separated at all. And the spiritual is the source of the mental. Come on in. That's where we have to go from here.